The events of Landman Season 1 finale should have drastic effects on the future of MTEX, including a risky fracking plan. MTEX is a fictional private oil company invented for the Paramount Plus series, which was created by Taylor Sheridan and Christian Wallace and is based on the latter's podcast, Boomtown. With that in mind, Landman Season 1 ending may have taken its creative liberties with matters like the cartel and other family drama, but there's plenty of real-world basis in the oil industry matters discussed on the show. Jon Hamm played oil magnate and MTEX CEO Monty Miller in Landman's cast, though the character's health slowly declined, leading to his passing away in the finale. With Monty gone, two people are essentially in charge of MTEX: Tommy Norris, Billy Bob Thornton, and Cammy Miller, Demi Moore. Cammy was Monty's wife and ultimately has the final say in what happens to his wealth, but Tommy is the one who will be managing the company on her behalf going forward. This creates an interesting, dramatic dynamic heading into Season 2, where the future of MTEX is entirely unstable. What a farm-out is. MTEX is getting a lease to access new oil. Landman Season 1 finale explains that Monty Morris' plan for MTEX was to arrange a farm-out lease arrangement with a value of $200 million. Essentially, what a farm-out agreement means is that MTEX will be allowed access to drill for oil on behalf of a landowner, granting them the service of their equipment usage for a significant share of the profit. The risk in oil, however, especially when making such an enormous deal, is that the industry is volatile and runs into the risk of massive busts. A major component of Cammy's role in the finale was determining what to do in the wake of Monty's death. She understood that Monty's life was in the pursuit of a lasting legacy, with him wanting to contribute a sizable amount of his wealth to a foundation or create one of his own, giving back to the world. With $200 million, Cammy and her family could live comfortably for generations, but her belief is that they likely wouldn't have enough to establish a foundation worthy of Monty's memory or his goals. The farm-out is what he wanted, so it's what they're doing. Tommy's plan for MTEX's oil and New Deal explained. Tommy hopes to turn Cammy's $200 million into $1.4 billion. Billy Bob Thornton as Tommy wearing a cowboy hat and sunglasses in Landman Season 1 Episode 10. To simplify the plan, Tommy is going to roll the dice on the $200 million, with hopes of turning it into a whopping $1.4 billion, an amount that will make the world remember Monty. For Cammy, it's not about obtaining the money but about what they can do with the money, turning it back into something good. The downside is that they could end up bankrupt, and Cammy and her family could end up totally broke. Tommy advises her against taking this bet, but she believes she has to do so in order to respect her husband's wishes. Tommy suggests that they may be able to sell the farm-out lease to another company at some point, months or years down the line, for an increased amount rather than going all in, which he believed is what Monty would do. This would be them pulling ahead and cashing their chips, possibly tripling the money. However, Taylor Sheridan makes a point with Landman to demonstrate how challenging it is to turn away from the pursuit of wealth, as someone who's winning money will always want to win more until they lose it all in the process. From there, Tommy tells Rebecca that he needs her to negotiate a farm-out lease, as Monty had made her the vice president of exploration and intended to use her killer instinct as a lawyer as a weapon. Tommy declares that their plan is to recoup on Strike's 120% and allow revenue sharing, with the intent of getting ahead of the banks. He's trying to establish a stable environment so there aren't any issues with his workforce while they gamble on this high-end deal. Why Rebecca is against fracking and why it's so controversial. Rebecca believes fracking causes earthquakes. Rebecca Falcone, Kayla Wallace, looking angry while talking to Tommy in Landman Season 1, Episode 10. Fracking is a method of gathering oil through the use of pressurized liquid, essentially cracking the hard rock below the surface, allowing room for oil to flow more freely. The method began in 1947 and has become rather controversial, with Rebecca Falcone stating clearly that she's vehemently against this tactic despite its opportunities for increased profits. This is an odd perspective as she's agreed to work for an oil company, but Taylor Sheridan likely put it in his show to examine the pros and cons of what fracking is capable of. Rebecca suggests that fracking causes earthquakes in Oklahoma, which is used as an example as the state has the most induced earthquakes in the US, via USGS. According to the source, fracking causes 2% of the state's earthquakes. The largest fracking-induced earthquake was a magnitude 4 in Texas in 2018. So, while Rebecca isn't entirely right in the reasoning behind her perspective, there are still environmental concerns caused by fracking, such as local water contamination and pollution, via Environment America. What happens to MTEX Oil and Tommy if it doesn't work? MTEX can go bankrupt. Demi Moore as Cammy looking serious next to Billy Bob Thornton as Tommy with his face injured in Landman custom image by Nick Bithrow. Despite Tommy saying that men die and oil companies live forever, oil companies can undoubtedly go out of business, and there is an enormous measure of risk if they go bankrupt from oil prices dropping or a pandemic-like event. As for Tommy, it's not really his money that's being dealt here, though his job is on the line. It hasn't been mentioned in several episodes, but Tommy is still massively in debt from the previous oil bust, and he would struggle to maintain his family life if he lost his job, especially given that he lives in a company-owned house. Still, Tommy is a resourceful man, and he'd likely find some way to recover if MTEX failed. What's mostly at stake in terms of the show is Monty's legacy and the livelihood of Cammy and her family now that he's gone. Their employees would all lose their jobs, but problems with the oil industry would cause this to happen regardless. Especially now that Landman has moved away from its patch crew characters, the focus of Taylor Sheridan's show is mostly on the high-end players at MTEX.